Hello everyone, welcome to episode number 27 of the Bill Podcast, and today we'll be going through Yeoman, which means a modern workflow for creating a modern web app. Now, while using Yeoman, I found that a lot of the processes in creating a front-end project, serving up a web server, or even installing some plugins and such has been really cut short in terms of time. So this is what Yeoman serves to do. Get a bunch of tools together and quickly fire it up for the developer. So let's go through the web page first. It's a very nice web page. I love it because first it tells you immediately about the features. We will be going through most of them except for the last two bit, which I believe should be done in another episode by itself about MVC and creating modules, ECMAScript 6 syntax and so on. So other than that, I also highly recommend you to check out this little 6-minute video by the developer himself, Yeoman. He actually goes through all the tools, and in this video you'll be able to see how fast it is to get started with Yeoman. So other than that, if you go through the installation link, it will quickly tell you that there's this one-liner curl command that you'll need to paste in. So what this curl command will do is kind of check whether you have all the packages and other programs installed, such as Node and NPM and Ruby, and it will then start the Yeoman installation. This is the installation page, and after that, the other page that I really find useful is the command line page, and we'll be using a lot of these commands in today's tutorial as well. So let's get started with Yeoman, and the first thing I will do is come on to my command line. So I'm on my desktop, and the very first command we will check out after installation is Yeoman -- version, and if it is properly installed, it will definitely show you the current version. The next command is just Yeoman itself. And this will kind of give you all the common commands that Yeoman will use. For example, init, build, server, test, install, uninstall. We will be using a lot of them. Finally, before we start the project, it is very useful to check out Yeoman init -- help, which will also give you an overview about the many projects that we can start with. As you can see here, there is Amber, there is Mocha, Testacular, Blackbone, Boilerplate, Angular, and so much more. So we'll be using some of these commands to do our project. So let's check out our project first. So for today, we'll be doing a very simple page, and as usual, within the page itself, we will learn something. So this week, I was a little bit into object-oriented programming, and I decided to check out and learn more about each of the terminologies. So it's very easy, a very simple page, but a lot of things are going on this page. Firstly, this is done, the CSS is using Twitter Bootstrap. And also, if you see here the little syntax highlighting, so we are not just embedding these code within the code and the pre-HTML tags, we are also using some kind of JavaScript plugin called Prism. So Prism.js was created by Lieveru, another very talented developer, to create this sort of syntax highlighting and coloring. So we'll be using this in Yeoman as well, but it will be very quickly done. We don't even have to go and download it and then transfer the file to our project folder and so on and so forth. So to get started, I'm back in my command line, and let me create an empty directory called OOP for object-oriented programming. So let me just get inside there. And of course, it is very empty. The very first command to initiate a Yeoman project will be Yeoman init. With this, it will ask you certain questions. So would you like to include Twitter Bootstrap for Compass? Yes, we will. Would you like to include Bootstrap.js plugin? So let me just bring up this a little bit. No. AMD support? No. I would like to really create a very simple project. So no. So that's it, and here we will see that a lot of files and folders have been created. So why don't we open this up in our Sublime Text? So there you go, we have all done for us, and a lot of things are happening. So basically this entire thing over here is coming from HTML5 boilerplate. And notice when we go inside styles, because I said that I want to include Compass for Bootstrap, they have even included that. And notice we also have a test folder, which we will not use for this episode, but we have that already done for us. And along with that, also a grunt.js for some automated build processes, as well as package.json, and even some Git attributes. So really, just with one click of a button in Yeoman, we have basically initiated the project. Next, what we will do is very quickly come up to our command line and go ahead and do Yeoman server, and notice what happens. With just that command Yeoman server, you didn't even have to do anything. It will fire up a local web server in that folder, all ready for us to code. So just for the purpose of demo, I have just split the screen. One side browser and then the other side is text editor. Now notice what happened when I change the text here and I just press Command S. Immediately the browser here reflects the change. Now typically I would have to set up my live reload server and then turn on this Chrome extension and do so many things to get this started. Next, what I'll do is let me clean up the index.html a little bit. So I'll just initiate a very simple HTML and put in the title. And firstly, let us connect up the main.css. So as you can see, it's inside the styles folder here, and then we have main.sass, but of course it will be compiled for us. So for that, we will link it and we will call it main.css. Now if we go inside main.sass, just for the fun of it, let's include body, background color as yellow. And here, of course, I have to make it into styles/main.css. And notice what happened. Even the yellow background is immediately reflected. Now, if this was another project that was not built with Yeoman, I will also have to fire up my Sass compiler in the background, which I completely did not have to do it here. So let me just remove this and come back to my index.html. Now notice, since I have said that I am using Twitter Bootstrap, it already creates an import for me. So all I need to do is start using the classes and IDs and the HTML tags associated with Twitter Bootstrap. So let me go ahead and do that, and we will create the very first little thing, the header of our project. So before we do that, I'll just come back and make the screen bigger so that we can see the code. So the very first thing we will do is create a container, and inside here all our code for the OOP documentation will reside. So the very first div will be called Hero Unit, which is taken directly from the Twitter Bootstrap, and in that we will have a header1 tag and call it object-oriented programming. And after the header one, we will have a little paragraph that will say a little bit about what an OOP is. It is a programming paradigm that uses abstraction. Okay, so when we come back to the browser, guess what? Once again, no refreshing or whatsoever is needed. It's already there. Next, after our hero unit portion of the tag, we will create a h2, and inside that we will describe what a class is. And of course, I will also have a small tag, and inside that I will paste in what a class is. It basically defines the data type or characteristic of the object. Now here's the interesting thing. After this, I'm going to place in some code which is JavaScript or C-like syntax. So to do that, I will embed the code inside pre-tag, inside code, and then this code will have a class of language JavaScript. This is of course done in Zen coding. And after this we will describe our class. So class is actually a vehicle, and inside the vehicle I have some methods that describes the class. For example, wheel, speed, and color. And then I also have a constructor method which basically instantiates the class with a speed calculation, as well as the wheels must be 4 of them. And lastly, I also have a few methods. So I have two methods here. The first one is just called honk, which will basically say that, hey, I'm from this destination and my average speed was so and so. And then the next method, which is also function, kind of says that, hey, I am the number of wheeler vehicle. So as you can see here, let's come back to the browser. This syntax does not have any sort of coloring. Wouldn't it be nice to have some sort of coloring? So for that, we'll be using Prism.js. Now, Yeoman makes it really easy to install external plugins or packages such as Prism for syntax highlighting. So firstly, what we can do is Yeoman list to kind of list the packages that are already installed in our project. Obviously, we did not install anything, so this will kind of give us a blank. Next, what we can do is actually search for packages. So to do that, we can just press Yeoman search, and notice there are so many packages that will come up. So here you go, right from accounting and a lot of Angular JS packages. It seems like it's a bit in reverse alphabetical order. So we will just go right up to where the P is. And there you go. I found Prism, which is by Lieveru Prism and hosted in GitHub. This is the one that we want to install. So we have the name Prism here. And the next thing we do is we clear the screen. All we have to do is Yeoman install Prism. That's it. So notice what the Bower package manager, which comes with Yeoman, will do is that it will go to the GitHub repository. It will kind of check it out and copy and install it in our project. So let's go to Sublime Text and look what is happening. So in our folder structure, there will be this new folder created, and that will be called components. And once we open up components, there you go, you have Prism. So how do we use Prism in our project? The very first thing we have to do in Prism is kind of link the style sheet. And for style sheet, it is prism.css, this one. And also we have to link to the JavaScript file, which is prism.js. So in our plain index.html, we will be linking that. So first, let's link our style sheet. And for that, we need to go inside components folder here and write what it says inside Prism, and then we have prism.css. So we have inside prism/prism.css. Right, so this is the style sheet, and right at the bottom, before the body tag ends, we will link to the script tag as well. And the script tag will be similar, so it will be once again components/prism/prism.js. And now when we go back to our browser, we should have syntax highlighting. Yes, we have. Notice that some are green, some are blue. So for the sake of demo, let us go ahead and install this accounting package as well. So notice once again in our components folder, we only have one folder so far, Prism. Notice what happens when we do Yeoman install accounting. It will do the same installation procedure like Prism. And once we come back, notice that a new accounting folder has been created. But what if we want to uninstall it? It's as simple as Yeoman uninstall and then accounting. So it's really fast, and when we come back, notice that the accounting folder is gone. So in Yeoman, whenever packages are installed, it is in very component style. Lastly, for the sake of completing the project, I will copy and paste the rest of the terminologies for OOP in a very similar fashion. So let me come ahead and paste in some code here. And once I go to my browser, I have class, and then of course I have object, property, method, constructor, inheritance. Okay, so this was the project, but guess what? This was only in the development environment. So Yeoman also really speeds up the process for preparing it for production. So how do we do that? So the very first thing I will do is kind of quit the development server. And next, all I have to do is Yeoman and then build. So what Yeoman build will do is, let's come back to the folder structure once again. It will create a separate folder here called dist, and this is where all our production related files will enter. So how will the Yeoman build act? It will actually use the grunt.js file to do all the build processes. And if we look inside the grunt.js file, this file in itself has a lot for us to learn. For example, it does compilation to JS from Coffee, or even the Compass one that we really need for this project. Manifest Mocha if you're doing some testing. It even watches some file during our reload function. And lastly, of course, some kind of minification as well as some kind of JPEG and PNG optimization. Lastly, it will concat and minify some of the destination files that we put in. So this is what the Yeoman build will do. So let's go through it. So I'll just press in the command, right? So looks like it is done, and when we come back to our folder structure, yes, the dist file has been created. So it will contain very much same as the entire app folder, but notice things like git attribute or grunt.js files, they are not inside because in production we do not need them. So now instead of running the index.html file from the app folder, if we want to see how it looks like in the production, we should run it from the dist folder. And to do that, Yeoman makes it easy as well. All we need to do is Yeoman server, and this time we pass in a parameter dist. And when we go back to our browser and refresh, it will look the same. But if we go to our view source, we will see that, hey, the styles.css has been minified, and it even has a special name so that it's properly cached. So a lot of changes has occurred, and it has even prepared the entire project for production. Right, so that's it for this week's episode on Yeoman, and I also hope we learned something about OOP or object-oriented programming. Now, Yeoman in itself takes in a lot of tools that are done at one shot to make the developer's workflow speed. I would recommend you to kind of check out these tools individually itself to have a little bit of background. You should definitely have a very thorough, comfortable use of command line, and I'm kind of inferring to the past build podcast episodes. The next one that you should be familiar is Package Manager. Now, Yeoman uses the Twitter's Boar Package Manager, but package managers in general have very similar concepts of installation and uninstallation and updating. The next one that Yeoman really uses for build processes is this thing called grunt.js. So if you're not familiar with it, do check out the episode on grunt.js as well. And lastly, Yeoman also, as one of the options, installs an AMD a modular approach to installing JavaScript. So one of them is called require.js that Yeoman uses. So do check out episode number 13 for that. Right, so finally, also do check out Prism that I used in the project. It is a very nice, handy little tool for syntax highlighting. And for object-oriented JavaScript or programming in general, you can check out the Mozilla page, or even this YouTube link that I found. It was a very handy way of explaining what is OOP. And finally, some more links on Yeoman itself. So there is this very beautiful tutorial from the NetTuts, one of my favorite websites, and also one from Adobe that explains how Yeoman can help us. The next one is actually an article by Adi Osmani, one of the developers of Yeoman itself, so I highly recommend you to definitely check out because he talks about some of the fundamentals on what is being done behind Yeoman. And of course, this episode number 1 of The Breakpoint by Adi Osmani himself, as well as Paul Lewis from the Google developer team, that gives a little bit background on Yeoman. He, as you can see here, he actually runs Yeoman and shows us how we can set up projects. Lastly, as you can see, Yeoman is a lot about workflow, about a developer's coding process. So Paul Irish, in one of the recent conferences, he also spoke about web application development workflow, and in the middle of the talk, he also spoke about Yeoman itself. So I highly recommend you to check out this as well. Finally, for the build link of the episode, it is actually this a little live talk show called The Breakpoint. It is done by the Google Chrome developer teams, and they are basically headed by Adi Osmani, the developer of Yeoman, as well as Paul Irish. So they are from the Yeoman team. So I really enjoy watching this. They really talk a lot about your workflow and so on and so forth. So do follow, of course, Paul Irish as well as Adi Osmani in their blog, and Breakpoint, the build link of the episode. And that's it for this episode. For all the other episodes, you can check out the various channels through which you can get your weekly content. And here's to a great 2013, a year of building, making, and creating more fun stuff. And I'll see you next year. Goodbye.